Hey, it's Isabel. If you're enjoying In Our Headphones, I want to recommend another podcast that I think you'll really like. It's called Life in 7 Songs, and it asks the question, what songs help tell your life story? In each episode, some of the world's most fascinating people share the moments and the music that have defined their lives. It includes guests like Dwayne Wiggins, the record producer who discovered Beyoncé and helped artists like Zendaya become superstars. So don't miss it. New episodes of Life in 7 Songs are available every other Tuesday. You're listening to In Our Headphones.
Your chance to discover the songs KEXP DJs don't want you to miss. I'm Janice Headley.
And I'm Isabel Khalili. And this is your never-ending source for new music discovery from listener-powered KEXP. I'm Isabel Khalili, and today on In Our Headphones, I'm joined by Tory J, co-host of Sounds of Survivance, KEXP's global Indigenous music show. Tory, thanks so much for being here to share music with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's awesome to be here.
When I had your co-host, Kevin Sir, on the show with me back in April, we talked about his intentions for the show and how his life path and his background in music led him here. And I hoped that we could start our conversation learning about your background and what brought you to KEXP.
Yeah. So I'm Quinault from Tahola on the mouth of the Quinault River. So for accessibility's sake, that's like the southwest corner of the Washington State Peninsula on the Quinault Indian Reservation. I always like to emphasize the fact that I come from the mouth rather than coming from the state, just to decenter Washington statehood. Just because Quinault Indian Nation pre-exists the state of Washington, it pre-exists all of these borders. And that spirit of being from the mouth, being from the water, and being from a place where you could hear the ocean 24/7 is like really what animates all that I do in sound work. We'll talk about this later, but like the work that I do in grad school and the work that I do for KEXP and the work that I do as a guitarist, like all of that is informed and animated by where I come from.
I'd like to learn more about, you mentioned being a grad student. I know you're a PhD candidate, and I'd like to learn more about how your work as a scholar or in academia kind of relates to your work as a DJ and musician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so my specific discipline is Native American Studies, but my subfield or subdiscipline is Indigenous Sound and Music Studies. So I usually tell people I'm a musicologist in training, but really the reason why I wanted to do Indigenous Sound and Music Studies is because I've always had these questions about sound. I learned from my major professor, Jessica Bissett-Perea, who's a Dena'ina musicologist, that the deeper questions I had about music are something that you can do. Like you can just be a musicologist, you can think through sound and how that articulates ways of being and ways of knowing. And that's kind of the primary focus of my work, is to think through how sound in music informs Indigenous life and Indigenous nationhood, sovereignty, cultural revitalization, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. What do you hope people get out of your show?
Well, one of my main goals is to dismantle this notion that Indigenous peoples are in these like static communities not making art, So like it's similar to the way I conceptualize it as to this sort of settler colonial myth that we kind of just sat in our communities and did nothing. And we're just kind of like literally, these are colonizer words, by the way. They're not my words. Indolent and lazy. And we just had everything we needed. But the reason why we have all of those things is because of our own activity, the motion that we have as people and the things that we animate our practices. And sound, I think, is a deeply potent media for that, or a deeply potent medium, rather.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah.
Well, thank you for all of that. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that kind of relates to your different song choices today.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can get into those in a second. But first, if you want to hear more from Tory J and his co-host Kevin Sir, you can listen to Sounds of Survivance every Monday from 3 to 5 a.m. Pacific time, or anytime in the 2-week archive that can be found on kexp.org or the KEXP app. So should we get into the song choices?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So what's your first pick?
So the first pick is a song called Seeing Two by the band Deerlady, which is a duo that consists of Malio Bomsawin, who's from Odanak First Nation, and Magdalena Abrego, guitarist and composer. And this is from their album Greatest Hits, which came out in January of this year. The thing that grabs me immediately is like this really infectious guitar riff in 6. It's like the first seconds of the song and kind of shapes the rest of the composition.
Seeing two, slipping through, passing by line uncoiling, snow above and in between.
It's this beautiful sort of musical math of Magdalena playing in 6 and then their drummer. Unfortunately, I don't know which drummer it is because there are 3 drumming credits on the album. So Eli Cohen, Chuck Roldan, and Colin Fleming, whichever drummer it was, plays this really awesome and groovy 3/2 polyrhythm kind of through the whole song. So it just has this really like groovy and rhythmic timing. Magdalena plays like this 6-string hollow body guitar, if my ears are correct on that. And it's complemented so well by Molly's voice and, you know, like I said, that drum groove and all of the cool sound design that Magdalena does with the guitar. You can tell that Magdalena is a pedal nerd like me. So,
I was going to say, we can tell that you are,
yeah.
too.
Shout outs to all my pedal board makers out there.
This song, because of the kind of shoegazy haziness of it, I had trouble deciphering the lyrics very well, but I'm wondering if there are parts in the content of the lyrics that stood out to you.
Yeah, so I kind of had a similar issue with the song, and unfortunately I wasn't able to find like the lyrics for Seeing Two specifically online, but I think the spirit of what they're trying to capture with this record, according to Molly, is intimacy under colonialism, that sort of feeling of how we love under these conditions, these inequitable structures that inevitably shape our lives, but they don't shape our spirit, you know. There was the music review for Deerlady's album that said, "Headbang while you weep." I think Seeing Two is like the banger that you put on while you weep.
Let's get on to your next song. What do you have for us?
Yeah, this next song is near to my heart because one of my favorite things to do with Sounds of Survivance is to amplify the native metal scene. It's such a vibrant scene, and it's an absolute joy for me to amplify Rez Metal. You know, Rez Metal has become its own sort of conceptual framework. So I use it with generosity to the people that think through Rez Metal and stuff like that. But this song is called Throne of Ashes, and it's by a band called Under Exile. Under Exile, they're like many of the artists that I play in the native metal scene. They're based out of the Southwest. As far as I know, their makeup is mostly of Diné musicians, and the way that the community is shaped in the Southwest, you have all of these different like pop-up shows and little like mini festivals and stuff. Like one of the coolest things that I've seen come out of the scene is like Navajo Nation Metal Fest. So they just have a metal fest that's named after Navajo Nation. Not necessarily that all the bands are Navajo, but like that they're representing Navajo land or Dinétah, like where they're playing the shows, and also representing the fact that the scene has grown from Diné territories and other surrounding territories of Southwest Native peoples.
Well, I feel like I've I know that you're would you call yourself a metalhead?
Yeah. I definitely wear on my sleeve that I'm a metalhead.
Yeah. And I feel like I've gotten into it more through you and your show and like your recommendations. And I have to say, this song rips.
Yeah,
I was like,
totally.
okay, maybe I could become a metalhead too.
Yeah. Oh, yes, one of us.
Another one. I
Yeah.
also feel like people who are into metal are just really nice people, usually.
Yeah, that is kind of like the thing.
Yeah, I wonder why that is. Is
Yeah.
it like getting out, there's some kind of aggression that's released?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the big thing that shapes the experience with metal music is just having that sort of, like that empowerment, like an empowerment feeling in the music. It's very like anti-establishment, and
Yeah.
it's very cathartic in those ways where we're sort of living in these anxious these systems that make us feel this sort of anxiety, and metal kind of allows us to imagine outside of that, or imagine maybe slapping it in the face. Yeah. And I don't know if the band would sanction this comparison, but I think that they sound very much like the extremely popular metal band Lamb of God, particularly in this song. But a lot of that influence, to my ears, comes from Franklin Yazzie, who's the vocalist for the band. And for those out there who are new metal fans, or for those who are new to the genre, harsh vocals are actually really intensely difficult vocal technique to master. And I think that Franklin, like Randy Blythe, the vocalist for Lamb of God, has this immense range that you can definitely hear, especially in the outro to this track. It's just so crushing and just so like monstrous in the best possible way. And that actually takes a lot of talent. It utilizes the same sort of like vocal physiological mechanisms as, say, any other vocal technique like operatic singing. And so, yeah, it's really impressive to hear. I love a great harsh vocal performance.
All right, let's get into your third pick of the day. What's your next song?
Yeah, this next song is In Between by Tharun Sankar, who's a trumpet player based out of San Francisco.
Sunlight fades, shadows change, I lay back. Flowing winds pushing down the same track.
Tharun is the trumpet player from my last and first band. It was my first band ever, and it was the last band I was in, called Dysfunctional, with a K, because we're funky like that, We did like...
Very clever.
Yeah, we did like funk, jazz, pop, mostly covers, improvisational music, and we gigged around the Mission District of San Francisco. Also, I want to shout out Grace Chang, Jared Marks Kuo, and Ross Taylor, who were the keyboardist and vocalist, bass player and drummer, respectively. But I always knew that Tharun had, these aspirations to release something pretty soon. And so Foliage is the name of his EP that just came out. And In Between is one of the singles. It features Cubby, who's a childhood friend of Tharun's. And one cool thing that I want to shout out about Tharun is that when I told him I wanted to talk about In Between, I asked how he wanted to be identified on the show. And he said that, I was kind of expecting him to just say like Indian American, right? Or something like that. But he ended up doing this whole like dive into the indigenous territories that shape the places that he's from and where he's living. And so he made a point to tell me that he's from Nipmuc territory in Massachusetts, and then he now lives in Ramaytush Ohlone territory in San Francisco, which I just thought was a really cool gesture because, you know, as a Native person, like it's usually thrust, especially a Native person who styles himself an Indigenous studies scholar, it's kind of thrust on me a lot to like know whose territory I'm in and stuff like that. And like, I'd love to live in a reality where we all just know, you know, we know whose territory we're in, and preferably the lands are in the hands of those people, you know. And so I thought that was really cool that he did that. But in between, it's just this like really quiet comfort was a phrase that Tharun used to describe some of the songs on his EP. The whole thing is about like trying to find those quiet moments and like not thinking too much about like goal setting. And and so the song is just about trying to find peace and joy without like, you know, being too caught up in the rat race and too caught up in all of those things. And I think he really achieves that with the song. And he has this pedal tone compositional framework that he likes to use where he kind of lingers on a specific note and then outlines the harmony around that note. And so the song changes key multiple times, or I would say rather that it borrows from other keys. It's a music theory thing called modal interchange for all of my theory nerds out there. But it's all centered around certain pedal tones, and in between it's a G note, and you can hear it right in the beginning of the track. Just that pedal tone approach, it kind of has this musical metaphor of like an always changing and shifting world that relies on and rests on one thing, a home. It's like a sounded form of homemaking. And so it's something I can really relate to.
Life goes on and moves with me. As moments pass, it's clear to see. Only when the leaves are still find my feet. Got me running from my shadow. I know that I'm still free. Even when I can't find my place, the trees hold me between.
That was the song In Between by Tharun Sankar. Remember that you can hear all of the songs we feature in full on the In Our Headphones playlist over on Spotify or our playlist on the KEXP Podcast's YouTube channel. You can find links to those on our website at kexp.org/podcasts on the In Our Headphones landing page. And for now, let's get to your final song, Tory. So in our last pick of the week from each DJ, we like to get something that's more foundational or a song that's from any era that means something to you. What did you choose for that?
Yeah, so this last song, earlier I alluded to this love of the modern progressive metal scene. And so one of the most important artists in that scene for me is David Maxim Micic. He's a Serbian guitarist and composer and producer. He like does everything himself. It's actually incredibly impressive. But this song is from his 2013 album, Bilo 3.0. And Bilo means heartbeat in the Serbian language. And this song is called Smile. It features Aleksandra Chelmash on vocals, who's also from Serbia. And then it has a guitar solo from Seattle's own Jeff Loomis, who's a really famous, insanely talented guitarist who was known for the band Nevermore. And there's a famous anecdote about how he tried out for Megadeth when he was like 17. And so Smile is a really special song to me because, you know, if somebody were to ask me, like, what's your favorite album of all time, it would be Bilo 3.0 by David Maxim Micic. And I have this really special memory of when I was on a study abroad in the Philippines. I had the opportunity to ride on top of a jeepney in the rice terraces of Batad and Banaue. And it was just this really incredible thing where we're like on this jeepney on a dirt road, It's incredibly sunny out because it's like midday, and we're just in the rice terraces. And I was just like, I have to listen to Below 3.0 right now. And so this album, it kind of comes up for me, like it reoccurs in my life a lot. Like it happens to pop up in some of the most important moments of my life. And, you know, if I had to pick a favorite track, it would be Smile, just because I really love Alexandra Jelmash's vocal performance. And Jeff Loomis's solo is like iconic, like top 3 favorite guitar solos. It's like top 1 favorite guitar solo openings. I know that's like hyper specific, but if you listen to the solo, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about.
You had mentioned that there were a few other tracks that you really wanted to feature, and do you want to give us one honorable mention?
Yeah, I want to shout out Kim Mortal. Kim Mortal is a queer Filipinx rapper from Vancouver, and they just released a part 2 of a song called Stop Business as Usual, but this one includes verses from Phoenix Pagliacci from Toronto and Bobby Sanchez from Peru. Grew up in New York, but is from Peru.
Laying back, they said it, freedom, yes, we'll get it. Revolutionary method, genocide, don't let it pass you by. Children continue to die, yeah, ask me why. People in land colonized, live in a prison state. Daily they discriminate, rather kill than integrate. Watching us disintegrate, but you cannot imitate our style in your face. Revolution illustrate, truth will disseminate. Laying back from Peru to Palestine, killing people for some oil land and some gasoline.
It's a follow-up track to the original version that was just Kim, that came out in 2023. It was Kim's response to the genocide, the ongoing genocide in Gaza right now. And so Kim just released this part 2. It's a part 2 of the track with the collaboration with Phoenix and Bobby. All 3 of them are just kind of like an artist collective that just, you know, have something to say about this moment that's been unfortunately going on for 9 months now.
Yeah, so there's a lot that's brought up in this song. I wish I had the lyrics in front of me, but I know that it starts with repeating, I don't want to write a record. I want to reflect the times.
Stop this as usual. Stop the genocide. I don't want to write a record. I want to reflect the times.
But what do you think is the role of music or artists in reflecting the times, especially during times like this?
Yeah, and that's, I think, one really clever thing about this song is that Kim, Phoenix, and Bobby, the artists that are featured in the song, just all have this ethic to why they do what they do, and a really like sharp focus on their medium and their ability to talk about the things that they want to talk about. And so I think making a song that sort of has us reflect on why this, it's almost as if they're talking about how they don't want to be making that song.
Yeah.
You know, and I talk about this all the time with people who care about Indigenous issues, for instance. Like, I'd love to live in a world, like I said earlier, where we don't have to question or look up whose land we're living on, you know, and those kinds of things. And so I think this song serves as an anthem to remind the world that this is still going on and it needs to stop, you know. It's a really simple, it's elegant in its simplicity, the song's message.
Yeah, definitely. And very much about connecting different issues too. Mm-hmm. Even, well, you know, whether it's land back from Philippines to Palestine. Yeah,
and that's another thing that is really awesome about even just the concept of having a feature in a rap song. And so you can easily interpret this as like from the perspectives of each artist. Like Kim is a queer Filipino person who lives in Vancouver, which are also occupied and unceded territories. Phoenix is a rapper from Toronto, which is Anishinaabe territory. And then Bobby brings a specific two-spirit Peruvian voice, indigenous Peruvian voice to the track too. And so it has this effect of sounding an international collaboration against a settler colonial regime, you know, a violent and militaristic one that we all are complicit in, whether we like to pay attention or not. I think that these artists are calling our attention to that.
Yeah, and thank you for calling attention to this. And I think we can let the song speak for itself.
Yeah.
So thank you again, Tory, for sharing songs with us today and for being here with me and expanding my mind in this last hour that we've been talking. So
yeah, thank you so much for having me. Siokwo. That's thank you in Quinault.
But when the people lacking pigment ask what is this, I tell them mind the Mother Earth hating business. They see a risk in children that are indigenous, and to their loss across the land they show indifference. So it don't come as no surprise to me when they letting the babies bleed for the oil and the greed. Funded by the land of the free, we march and we plead. Defund, divest, detract is the people's decree. So we taking it to the streets from the river to sea. You can block TikTok, but we still gon' speak. Press roll out on pause, this a priority for all my people from Sudan, Congo to Haiti, Ethiopia, Myanmar, Tibet, and all my students too. South Africa making moves like how the Houthis do.
That was the song Stop Business as Usual Part 2 by Kim Mortal, Phoenix Pagliacci, and Bobby Sanchez. Remember, you can listen to all these songs in full by following along with our In Our Headphones playlists, available on both Spotify and YouTube. You can find links to those on our In Our Headphones podcast page on KEXP.org, and you can get tons more song recommendations from Tory J and his co-hosts Kevin Sir on Sounds of Survivance. That's live every Monday from 3 to 5 a.m. Pacific, or anytime in the 2-week archive at KEXP.org or the KEXP app. And here to share our last song of the week, we have KEXP's music director, Chris Sanley. Chris, what song has been playing in your headphones lately?
Okay. Well, thank Goddess she said it's okay to cry, because the way I was screaming and weeping when I first possible playlist. And I gotta say, it also pairs perfectly with the brat summer we are all living right now. And Charlie XCX actually has a beautiful tribute song to Sophie on her new album called So I.
Always on my mind, every day, every night. Your star burns so bright. When did I push you away? I was scared sometimes. You had a power like a lightning strike. When I'm on stage, sometimes I lie. Say that I love singing these songs you left behind. And I know you always said it's okay to cry. So I know I can cry, so I cry.
This self-titled posthumous Sophie album arrives on September 27th via Future Classic and Transgressive, and it contains material that she was close to completing before her tragic death at the age of 34 back in January of 2021 from an accidental fall. And this final album, was announced with an official statement from her family, and that's really it. So I'd like to share that, and that is, when we, Sophie's family, took our first steps towards bringing this project to fruition, we contacted the dear friends with whom she envisioned the album. We wrote, "We have been finding comfort in her music. Sophie left us. It is a gift we truly cherish as we try to find a way forward with Sophie forever at the center of our worlds." Sophie didn't often speak publicly of her private life, preferring to put everything she wanted to articulate in her music. It feels only right to share with the world the music she hoped to release in the belief that we can still all connect with her in this, the form she loved most. Sophie gave all of herself to her music. It is here she can always be found. And that just feels like so true. And I think that this is going to be so special. I'm still just like getting chills knowing that we're going to be able to hear what she was working on up into her last days. And reason why, it's such a banger. It's got these like intoxicating muddied synths and propulsing bass and a catchy repetitive chorus. And I think overall it's a pretty simple song structure that showcases the side of Sophie that kind of practiced a bit of restraint. And I think if you kind of even look back to the opener from her 2018 debut album, Oil of Every Pearl's on Insides, It's Okay to Cry, which was my first introduction to her. And, that track starts with like this gorgeous pop ballad with these affirming, validating lyrics.
All of the big occasions you might have missed. No, I accept you. And I don't even need to know your reasons. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay.
And then the last few measures, she explodes into this like bold, vibrant, electronic little set of chaos, kind of prepping you for the many twists and turns that she's about to take you on. She just touched people so deeply and so profoundly with her music. She was ahead of her time and taken from this earth far, far too soon. And I think this final album is just going to be such a special gift that's going to have everyone both in their feels and on the dance floor, which I think is a perfect place to exist.
I'm grateful for this song. I'm grateful for you bringing it to us today. I was hoping that someone in these next few weeks would bring up this song in our headphones. And I love the idea that Sophie can always be reached through her music. This is Sophie with Reason Why. Was chosen by Chris Sanley, KEXP's music director. Before that, I was talking with Tory J, host of KEXP's global Indigenous music show, Sounds of Survivance. You can find all the music from this episode on our In Our Headphones playlists available on both Spotify and YouTube. You can find links to those on the In Our Headphones podcast page on kexp.org. And consider buying the music you love directly from the artists. And if you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Share it with a friend. We'd also love to hear from you if you have feedback. This is still a new podcast, so it's helpful to hear how it's fitting into your lives, what you want more of, and other suggestions. So you can write to us directly at headphones@kexp.org. KEXP is an independent nonprofit radio station, so this podcast, along with all of our programming, is made possible by the generous support of our listeners. If you'd like to support us in this way, you can make a donation of $6 a month at kexp.org/headphones. In Our Headphones is hosted and produced by Janice Headley and myself, Isabel Khalili. Audio was mixed by Emily Fox and mastered by William Myers. And our director of editorial is Larry Mizell Jr. Our theme song is How Ma by the band Chinese American Bear. Tune in next week when Janice will be talking with the legendary Kevin Cole. I'm Isabel Khalili. See you next time on In Our Headphones from listener-powered KEXP, where the music matters.
Join KEXP for Red Hook Brewing's. Oh, I'm just kidding.
That was good.
Yeah.
That sounded just like Julian.
Yeah.
Damn.
I mean, it's so good to, or it's so easy to, I don't know. Like, it's such an iconic, like, voice,
Yeah,
you know?
It is.